So you like
Tough to beat the refs.
They're
Really tough to eat.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll now convene the Minturn Town Council meeting of October 15th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Kid here.
Brian here.
Lynn here.
Gusty here.
Eric here. And Earl here. Tom will be late today, so we'll punch him in when he's here. So please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull anything?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded.
Motion by Gusty, second by Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And now we have the approval of the regular agenda. Any amendments? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Eric, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now, if anyone on the board has a conflict of interest on any issue on the agenda, we appreciate you declaring it. Hearing none, we move on. Now's the time for public comment. Anyone who wants to address the board on any issue that's not on the agenda, you're welcome to come forward and state your name and address and let us have it. Cindy, anybody online?
No.
Okay. Moving on. We have council and committee reports. Kate, you got anything?
Nope.
Okay.
I do not.
Recording in progress.
Oops, did we miss something?
No, you're good.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Last week we had a fitness center board meeting and revenues are up 7.8% above last year. The 6-month and the annual memberships are up, and the big thing that's up is the personal training. In our meeting, I forgot to thank Jay. Jay's been filling in since Michelle's been gone and when Rob got hired on, and now Rob's on the board as secretary, but Jay filled in that time, and I wanted to say thanks to him and congratulations to Rob for being on the board.
Thank you, Gusty. Good.
No updates.
Okay. I don't have anything either, so let's move on. We're looking at special presentations. We have High Five Media with us tonight, and it is their official, wait, what's the anniversary now? How long? 40th anniversary of being in business. And as I always like to give these guys kudos, because without this, most citizens would not be able to have the opportunity to see their government at work. And it's something that's, I think is especially these days, as we feel it is very important for people to understand how government works. It's very process oriented, and so that's why it takes longer, because we have 1,100 customers in our town, and we have to make sure we do everything right by everybody. And I urge everyone to please go online at the High Five Media site, and you can stream our council meetings, and it goes back quite a ways too. So anyway, with that, we have a proclamation to do, but first, we want to come up and give us all kind of news.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, and staff. My name is J.K. Perry. I'm the executive director at High Five Access Media. Earl, I mean, you just nailed it on the head every time. I appreciate it. You really understand what it is that we do, and the asset that this is to the Valley. And I think it can go even further. And, you know, we always say that, you know, there's frustration with our government at the federal level, and it's hard to make change at the federal level. And we encourage folks to attend their local council meetings because they can make a difference there. Indeed, we see it every day. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. I also appreciate all of you considering the proclamation. This is a really important year. We're celebrating 40 years of serving the community. And as part of that, we're going to be taking a look back at the past decades, honoring people who have been involved, looking at what we're doing today as well, and the folks that are involved at High Five, and then looking toward the future too, and all the different ways that we can improve and increase the number of people that we serve. I want to recognize a few high fivers who are in attendance. We have our board president, Mads Partridge, here. We have our vice president, Russell Fredrickson. We have government guru, Jonathan Zarni, who you all know. And of course, we have Austin Richardson behind the camera over here. So thank you all for coming. Also want to thank Jonathan and another board member, Mike Griffin, for putting together the language for the proclamation. This stems from a larger effort, a national effort to recognize community media across the nation. So it's ways to raise awareness in all of our communities across the country about the importance of community media and everything that those organizations are up to. Most of all, I want to thank all the volunteers over the past 40 years that have shared their stories on High Five. It's really these narratives that shape and reinforce our ideas and our values, and they contribute to our understanding of the myriad fibers that interweave to form the tapestry of our mountain community. Without them, this wouldn't be possible, and without High Five, they wouldn't have a voice. So thank you to all those volunteers who have been involved over the years. And with that, I can answer any questions you might have, or...
Anybody got any questions for JK?
I just want to say thank you. Well, I think everyone in the council really appreciates how important what you do is.
Thank you. Thank you.
I always ask you this question same way every couple of years as far as archiving council meetings and being able to have that archive available. How's that going? I know it's probably complicated. But...
So we started archiving meetings in 2023, right? And we have some going back to 2022. And they are all, everything from that point on is accessible on our website. We're using a service called Internet Archive to be able to share all of those. And we're constantly updating that and bringing those into our website. We have an effort afoot. It's still really early on and we haven't figured it out, but we have archives going back to some stuff in the 70s. And we're trying to work with potentially with the Eagle Valley Library District for them to house the archives, but at the same time get everything digitized and make it available to the community, which would be great, for historical record, but it would also be a great base for other people to work off of if they wanted to do a documentary about, the early days of Minturn or something like that. They may be able to use some of that material for a project like that. So we are working on it. Jonathan's been integral to that. He's also really been working hard on, improving access in other ways with closed captions. So we are trying to meet people where they are and provide as much access as possible.
So those archives are VHS tape?
Some of it is 3/4 inch tape. If you remember the big beefy guys, which they last forever, which is awesome, and then we have VHS, we've got Beta, we've got
that won't last so
DVD. Yeah, I mean, the DVDs are the worst ones. They last 9 years and then they break down. So
I didn't know it was like that. Yeah.
So we need to get those done. We need so that we can maintain that record. And we have, council meetings, I think for Minturn, they go back to like 99 or something like that.
Yeah. It's also good too when we're dealing with old legislation and trying to understand the intent of what the legislation was about. The minutes give us a very small idea, but to be able to go back and pull up a meeting and watch it, that would be pretty cool. So they can figure it out.
When we were dealing with Battle Mountain agreements, we dug up the old council footage, and that was helpful in understanding what everyone's understanding of those agreements was.
Right, yeah, you can't tell the intent from the written document necessarily, so, yeah, that's a great thing to have, and, you know, it's always just a money thing, and we're trying to find grants for it, and, you know, so that we can have all of that available to the community.
Pretty manpower intensive, I would imagine.
Yeah, we started on it, I told him to stop, I'm like, this is gonna take too much time, and you cost too much to do that, so I stopped him, and, so we're looking at, you know, shipping it out somewhere where they do it professionally, and, you know.
Well, bad time for getting grants, huh?
Uh,
Are they
ye-
out there?
At the federal level, yes, some other people are stepping up. We are a little unsure of the fundraising climate right now. We're not sure where it's going. I think we'll find out. We'll have a little bit better idea probably after Colorado Gives Day. You know, how everybody is doing, not just us, but every organization in the valley.
All right. So I'll go ahead and read out this proclamation. And let's see, okay. Here we go. This is an official proclamation, Community Media Day, October 20, 2025, celebrating High Five Access Media's 40th anniversary. Whereas the free exchange of ideas and information strengthens our community, helping neighbors understand one another and build shared values. And whereas community media gives every resident a platform to tell their story, listen to others, and shape the local narrative together. And whereas through training, resources, and open access to technology, community media empowers people to create, share, and engage in ways that enrich civic life. And whereas community media ensures transparency in local government, fosters participation in democracy, and preserves the authentic record of our community's history. And whereas High Five Media's studio serves as a hub of creativity, civic dialogue, and collaboration, helping residents learn media skills, produce local content, and connect their shared storytelling. And whereas public education and government access channels, as well as community radio, remain essential yet often overlooked parts of our local information ecosystem. Whereas greater awareness and participation in community media strengthens local identity, civic pride, and cultural understanding. And whereas 2025 marks the 40th anniversary of High Five Media, Access Media, which for 4 decades has helped local residents share their voices, stay informed, and participate fully in public life. Now therefore be it resolved that October 20th, 2025 is hereby proclaimed as High Five Media Day in the town of Minturn, and all residents are encouraged to celebrate and support the role of community media in sustaining a connected, informed, and engaged community. And be it further resolved that the town of Minturn commends High Five Media for 40 years of dedicated service, broadcasting local government meetings, amplifying community voices, promoting local culture and events, and providing lifelong access to the tools of modern communication. Dated this 15th day of October 2025.
Thank you.
Congratulations, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Can we get a photo with you? Yeah. And staff too? Come on, Jay. Come on, Jay.
I got mine in there. I gave Jay my first one. I didn't want it.
Sure. Have Minturn in the background. With the frisbee.
The frisbee. But I will hold the frisbee.
Alright, I have to, combine
Scrunch
here.
up.
Unless we
Need
need
a
to-
front
do we
row.
need-
Do we need a front row?
you
Take a knee,
scrunching?
Mike.
Yeah. Oops.
Come on in here, Mike. Part of this deal.
There we go. There we go, I got it. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, got him.
All right.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have much time left.
Just squirt it.
And it's thinning,
Oh,
so.
looks really good.
Thank you. It's supposed to be a faux hawk, but my guy's out of town, so.
On to the next guy.
A little more money.
Oh, yeah.
I know what you're gonna talk about. I saw you did this yesterday.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. JK, thanks, great. Thank you.
Okay, so before we get to the housing, I need to circle back down as I usually do, skipping agenda items. So we have the staff reports up.
I wasn't gonna say a lot for the sake of time. Is there any questions?
I had one on Taylor Street paving or repaving. It's listed that it'll be coming to us like the 1st of November. Are we still trying to do that this year, or is that probably gonna be put off till next year? We're just looking at the quote.
It would be just moving forward with, did we already take bids on that, or we're going to get bids? I think it was,
It said something pending on it, so it
I think
says.
he had the bids, and then Jeff was gonna come back and talk to us about it, but yeah, it would be spring.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
And Norman is getting going now.
No, I mean, just,
Because the air went off too.
okay. Any other questions?
I've been enjoying the different pictures you put on the front. I did want to mention that as part of the OEdit thing, I actually have managed a program with the MNV students before. They did a recycling and waste audit on the mountain, and I worked with them for months, and it's an amazing program to work with. They're very professional, and if you need any help working with them.
We will need a group that can be engaged with them, and they're gonna come out here for 2 days in March and they'll have like a meeting with the public and kind of get some feedback on ideas, so that will be coming. So if you're available, that'd be great.
It's easier than staying up all night counting trash in the basement of the Air Ball. So yeah, that sounds great.
Cool.
Okay. Next, we have our last special presentation, the Regional Housing Strategy Kickoff Presentation. We have Ryan Poole in the house, and I believe Augustin Leon is possibly zooming in. And I'm not sure if Ariel is going to be on or not. But anyway.
Is the video working?
The video's working, the meeting's working, the lights are not,
Okay.
so.
Augustine, you ready?
Oh, sorry, Burger.
I just sent a request in order to share my screen.
Yep, I just granted that. You should be good.
Excellent. Thanks, Cindy.
Let's go back one. Okay, perfect. Good evening, everyone. Brian Poole, I'm with Government Performance Solutions. Just delighted to see many of you. It's been a year and a half since our retreat up in Vail, looking at your strategy, and it's great to see everybody here again. And actually, I'm delighted that we're going to be able to address at least one of the components that we touched on in our strategy retreat. So, and that is housing. So, our goal here tonight is to give you a quick introduction to what is being explored. So I'm here on behalf of sort of a consortium right now of Housing Eagle County and the city of Avon. Those two entities applied for and received a grant from the state to explore some additional housing options for this region, and that's really exciting. So that's given us an opportunity to be here and to share some ideas. This is the first of a series of community workshops that we'll be working through, and I'll get into some of the details here in a minute, but wanted to say thanks to Housing Eagle County and Avon before we dive in. All right, so a couple of things we're going to cover here is, first of all, just some background, making sure everybody's crisp on what are the challenges that we face in housing across the region. I happen to know you're all well versed in this, so I think I'll go quickly on that. And then we'll talk about some of the progress that's being made up and down the valley, and there is some good news here, right? So don't want to be a negative Nelly or whatever you want to call it, and acknowledge the good work that's being done over the last few years. And yet there's this remaining gap. So we'll talk about what that gap is, how big it is, we think, based on some surveys and assessments up and down the region, and then explore some possible solutions that may emerge from this work. There's been no commitments yet, no definitions yet. We're just sort of outlining what are some areas that might be explored and want to get those on your radar. So, and then we'll just go into a Q&A, right? If there's questions or ideas that you have, what should we be thinking about as we move through the process? Want to get your input on that. Again, this is a very early in the process. We had our first meeting last night in Avon, and so you're number 2, right? Oh, and then we'll cover what's next in terms of what happens through the fall, the winter, and into the spring for this process. All right, so a little bit of background on us. You do know me, Brian Poole. I'm a partner with GPS. And my partner, Augustine Leone, is online. Thanks for driving the slides and catching notes. We have Erin Ulrich as well. She's sort of in the bullpen if we need additional assistance for research or other work. But you'll probably be seeing mostly Augustine and myself throughout the process here. And our goal is to, and generally what we do is a lot of strategy work, a lot of operations improvement, and community outreach and stakeholder assessment for public agencies. We do work with the state, local agencies, and multi-district areas. We actually helped with some of the regional transit options that you're familiar with here, and have worked in the Valley for 15 years in various ways. So we're just delighted to be here, and we'll keep moving. So you'll notice here there's a QR code. All of our presentations and anything we distribute will have this QR code. All you need to do is scan this and you'll be drawn to our website, which has this presentation, for example, as well as all the assessments and the background data that we're going to reference today. So if you want to get technical and you want to get deep, there'll be more and more information that we'll post online. And so this is the gateway to our reservoir of information. As I mentioned at the top, we're going to ground ourselves in some facts here today. Just make sure everybody's dealing with, how recent is the information, what are some of the estimates that we have. Explore a couple of options in terms of what are some things that we could do going forward, and then hear from you in particular in terms of what you'd like to see emerge from this. What are some challenges that you think we might encounter as we explore all this? And all we're asking right now is that you listen and take in the facts, and then react with us as you would, right? Just give us your honest and candid assessment. That really helps us to adjust our approach and our strategy as we think about where do we go from here. And if there's anything missing in terms of the materials you're seeing or the tone or the approach that we're using, we're still flexible right now, just getting started here. So it's not too late to really coach us and help. All right, so why does housing matter? Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone here, but it's the strongest link to our local economy and to the workforce, both from, for example, some of the resorts in the area, and trying to keep our talent close, right? There are some concerns around workforce flight. As workers leave the area, they can't afford to stay here. Locals who maybe grew up here and are no longer able to afford as rents, for example, skyrocket. So we're thinking also about stability. We believe homeownership anchors families, anchors the schools and our neighborhoods, and is really the cornerstone to a resilient community. We see a broken ladder here, especially in the Valley over the last 10 years, where there's just too few rungs. As the median price has almost doubled over the last 10 years, you really see this difficult for people to move up as they might have done 20, 30 years ago, from a starter home to a middle home and so on, which is so difficult to see that happening now. And so that's a concern. Now, location as well. We want to see more housing near the jobs and reduce the overall reliance on commuting and traffic and long commutes, especially for folks going over the Valley and up and over passes, for example. So our concern here is, again, trying to have folks live closer to where they live and play and work. And then finally, the market gap. So everyone's been experiencing the free market over the last 10 years, and actually it's created and just hasn't created this gap. And hasn't served, especially low and middle income residents and households. So we believe some level of strategic action is necessary. Now, just a few data points in the next few slides. I'll go quickly through these, but again, probably no surprise. From 2015 to 2023, based on a recent housing assessment conducted by the county, essentially non-resort areas home prices on the median have nearly doubled across most towns. And even some of the traditionally more affordable areas, for example, like Gypsum and Town of Eagle, have seen sharp increases. And countywide, the median home price is now over $1 million, according to the most recent assessment. So those are for single families. Now, next slide. So in terms of the housing affordability gap, wages in the county no longer match the cost of housing for our home buyers. The red line that you sort of see at the bottom of the graph here below all those blue bars is actually is at about 53,000. That is one median wage earners take home pay, right? 53,000. And our estimates now say that it would actually take 5 people earning a median wage to afford a single household, median household right now. So it's just astonishing to see what it takes to actually afford a home in the median world. Now, for rent, it's not much better, actually. If you want to rent a 2-bedroom home at $3,000 a month, again, the average across the valley, that's you're going to need 2.3 wage earners to accomplish that on average. So out of reach for most families, and again, so a little bit of a little bit different of a number there, but still out of reach. And we've been looking at this from the county-wide perspective. There's been recent surveys done in advance of the county strategy work, and actually it's astonishing here. But if you look at that blue line, that is the priority as in terms of what is the #1 concern that you would have as residents in the county, and that is housing, far, far, far above the next potential issues like cost of living, the environment, and education. So really big challenges here when we're looking at just the public awareness of this and the focus on this. So our goal from here is to acknowledge that, but, oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead, Augustine. So, well, I want to acknowledge the sort of the numbers, but not just the numbers, right? If these are just realities for behind the statistics, if you will. For example, the Valley Home Store, operated by the county, currently has 1,500 buyers essentially in the queue, actively looking to purchase. It's an enormous number of people who are outside the system and unable to really access what they're looking for right now. Each time, for example, a lifelong resident retires but stays in their deed-restricted home, there's one less employee and one less housing unit. A purchase 10 years ago, for example, with a median sales price of $700,000 would have provided an easier step-up inventory for some folks in the housing spectrum, but that inventory is probably at 1.6 million now and unattainable. That's what we mean by that broken ladder. And then higher rental rates are actually pushing buyers to purchase and relieve the pressure of the unknown housing impacts, like, for example, a landlord selling a unit. Now, when we look at the overall demand, so this is really, I think, one of the more eye-opening statistics that we'll share tonight. This recent assessment established essentially that there's a current gap or need for new housing for 2,600 units. All right, that's today. And then over the next 10 years, with population growth and other changes in the demographics here, we're expecting a need for another 3,700 units across the valley. This is essentially meaning over the next 10 years, we're 6,400 units short. And that's really the driver for a lot of the work that we're talking about. There's just, this need is so overwhelming. And if we looked at that 10 years and said, where are people probably gonna want to reside, in the mix of places across the county, we're seeing something like 24% throughout the county in the non-municipal areas. Vail having one of the top line share of 26, Avon next up at a quarter, and then sort of the rest of it split between Eagle, Gypsum, and Minturn here, with just 1%, but still relative to your own population, right? That may be significant. So just an enormous need out there and not much supply. So-
Can I ask a quick question on
Sure,
that one?
sure.
I think we all also know that there's a housing shortage across the country, so we're not the only ones here, but we do have kind of a resort community impact on a percentage of our housing stock is being taken by, and some of these costs are being driven by out of community demand,
Right.
Entering in and kind of fighting for the same resource. Did you all try to quantify that at all as part of that, or was that out of the kind of scope of this
It's a
analysis?
little out of scope, but I think we may have some estimates of that. I'll have to talk with Tori and some others at the county to see what else lies beneath these meetings. But we'll take a note, and if I learn anything, we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Okay. However, communities are investing here. We want to just acknowledge, at least at the top level, here's about 1,500 units over the past 5 years that have been either created or preserved, if you will, for local jurisdictions. Eagle County's been investing heavily. You may be familiar with some of those. 747 units essentially over the last 5 years, and a commitment in the current strategic plan to do a little bit more. Town of Vale, looking at 690 units created or saved. They're doing some real work up there. And then Avon is working on and has saved 69 and also looking at some future allocations as well. So when you think about that 6,000, over the next 10 years, if 1,500 units have been under the current sort of trajectory, right, been saved or preserved over the last 5 years, you can see we're still out of bounds, even with this good work. But we want to acknowledge where real resources are being allocated. And just some examples, you may or may not be familiar with some of these, but we just wanted to highlight there are some specific areas. For example, $65 million over 4 years for Lake Creek Village, for example, and the sale that came from that. And then another $10 million in commissioner allocations there. And then some of the deed restriction programs that do provide some cover and a market for local residents here. Good Deeds, 176 units, and then the Vale and Deed and Mikasa Avon, some additional affordable units, and hundreds have been preserved there. And then many others are looking at local code updates. The county, Eagle, Gypsum, and you all, I know, have explored these here. And then local employers are stepping up. We've talked with Eagle County School District and Eagle River Water Sanitation and Vale Health. And we're starting to get more information about what they're doing and have done and what their plans are. So part of our assessment will include additional information going forward in terms of what they're exploring. And then if not even enough information on this, we just thought, put some human sort of thoughts on this. You can read these yourself, but these are folks who've come through the process and been able, through the resources that are available, to get a home. So you can see a local couple, 15 years in the county. They thought they'd never be able to buy a home, but the program that gave them sort of some starter dollars really helped them and achieve hope within the county. So that's an example of the kind of impact that we think we want to expand. Same thing for a school administrator, right? That's the only way they could have afforded a home here, and some other local quotes that we really want to keep in mind. These are folks either in healthcare, education, and so on. So trying to get that lower and middle income profile. Now, how we operate today. So the reason we're here is that essentially the way we operate today is making progress, and we want to acknowledge that, right? As well as there are a few things that could be done in the future that could really be a step change or, a massive change even in terms of how things are working. So right now there are housing partnerships, and multiple jurisdictions are working through, for example, the Valley Home Store, and we get a lot of good feedback from that, actually. There's been a lot of people who've had some progress there, and yet there's just diverse goals up and down the valley for each entity. They have different goals, different programs. There's different funding that goes sort of spikes up and down, or maybe doesn't do anything for a couple of years and then comes back on a special sort of windfall. And there is collaboration up and down the valley. I want to acknowledge that. And yet the differing boards create localized goals, and there's a lot of duplication of effort in terms of people doing administration and program and financial analysis and so on, where that work is actually being done 3, 4, 5 times sometimes in being inefficient. And so we could be more aligned around the vision overall, the coordination, the funding, the administration, and the impact. And that's something that we think about. And so if we thought about a little more organized, we might have some centralized execution, for example, maybe a unified board, actual strategy and strategic coordination around all this, and regional scaling, the ability to serve more with a higher level of service and more, if you will, ease of use when you have all those entities working together. All right, so right now, if we took the steady state, if you will, here on this slide, the current dedicated funds, we're looking at about $8 million a year from all in from the various resources right now, and the average that we're thinking is somewhere around 53 per units per year that are coming in to address this concern. We have some assumptions in here. That's about 150,000 per unit of an investment. However, costs obviously vary up and down the valley, so there's no averages can be just a little misleading when you start looking locally. But that's where we are, right, at 53. The thinking here is now if we had a moderate investment of an additional 25 million per year, and we'll talk about where that funding could come from as potential, but that could lead to another 167 units a year. And then another 40 million on top of that would lead to another 267. So now you're looking at substantially higher numbers in terms of the ability to start pecking away at that 6,000 number that we talked about. Over 10 years at 270 a year, that'd be 2,700, right? That'd be a third of the gap, or almost a half, depending on the growth rate. So at this bold
$700 million.
400 million a year, for example, over 10 years, right?
If you're saying like 8 plus 25 plus 40 times 10.
Oh, sorry, no, it wouldn't be cumulative. No, it'd be like either up 25 or up 40.
Up to 40.
Great question. Sorry if I misspoke. So you're looking at that increase, that extra 15 million would get you, that extra 100, for example. So these are round numbers and they're based on some averages, but the idea is to at least show you, where we're at the rate at which we're adding units, right, is a long way away from getting some kind of equilibrium. And so that's the concern out there, is that this is potentially time for action.
And when you say units, is that a particular type of thing, or is that any thing someone might live in?
Yeah, we're just thinking about generally probably smaller units, some single families, right? But multi-unit, it's that mix where we're talking about a really broad average.
Okay.
And again, the success on some of the smaller units has worked, right? And then some of the single family homes have been brought off the market, so you're going to see this kind of averages can be dangerous. This is what we always talk about. But the program work can be done. All right, so. Let's just give you some options or some potential tools in the tool belt that are out there. One is to continue investing in non-revenue housing solutions, right? So y'all are familiar with this and I know you are, policy-based and regulatory tools that would enable housing creation without direct public funding. For example, housing mitigation requirements, inclusionary zoning, some small development incentives, community housing overlays, and fast tracking approvals, for example. So these are things that can be done without that public level of investment, and I know you're exploring those. And those are helpful, right? They do provide and maybe help leverage some private development, and some of them can be scalable on the low end at least. However, there's no guarantees to these, right? And there's concerns about equities where developers may pass or bypass this, and we're only looking at market rate, but rather than some of the lower middle income folks may be missing out here, and then inconsistent results based on enforcement and conditions and so on, and then ultimately this is probably a small percentage of the impact again of that 6,000 units. Now. The second option is to continue local collaboration, essentially similar to what we're doing today, but maybe a step up, all right? And so here we're thinking about potentially each jurisdiction would keep control of their own housing programs. However, you would partner potentially through an intergovernmental agreement or an IGA. And in this case, maybe there are multiple IGAs or project-based IGAs or whatever that might be. But these could pool programs and services in certain cases and essentially launch a regional housing coalition, if you like. That's informal in its governance, but is formalized through at least these IGAs. And these could help deploy shared tools like buy downs, maybe some deed restricted resales, and some housing programs. So this is real dollars. These are some flexible tools, could provide some quick wins, and would keep some of the local control. So again, nothing that we wouldn't want to potentially pursue here. However, it would still be voluntary. These IGAs could be limited, right, or curtailed over time. The administrative burden is still a heavy lift when you have multiple agencies all doing the local organization, local governance, all of that. And then turnover here in leadership locally or broadly really could weaken that or erode the commitments here. So there's some just longevity concerns when you get into this. And then some competing priorities, other things may come up, and then this starts to fade and it doesn't have that sustainability, the long-term strategy, the long-term funding that might exist somewhere through another strategy. And here's one of those. So a regional housing authority, potentially, right, would mean a shared governance model up and down the valley where actually would require, in this case, of some kind of a voter-approved revenue stream. That might be a tax or a fee dedicated strictly to housing, all right? This would be the high watermark in terms of effort, in terms of funding. It would operate independently to plan, fund, and execute housing solutions across the region with scale, speed, and staying power. Now here we believe, you could plan and build at scale. This is where you start getting into those numbers that we were talking about earlier. You could provide highly stable funding sources for 3, 5, 10 years out. This is really important to start bringing people in and establishing bonding power and some predictable cash flow. It would be potentially a one-stop shop for programs, partnerships, buyers, and sellers. At that point, you could really start to see scale, right? The fit of the supply and demand. What can you bring? What can be sold? All of that could really be administered at a very efficient level. More bang for the buck for greater efficiency and centralized staff and fewer redundancies. One playbook for processes, one application for a member of the public. Just come forward and say, hey, here's what I have, here's what I can do. And then all of the various options would open up with one conversation. Really easier for the public to interact with this. And even developer friendly, right? With this longer term funding mechanisms, streamlined processes for developments and so on. It would be a lot easier to bring developers in and have them work with us. Now, where does this stall? Let's be really, really frank right here. This would need a ballot win. Right? You must mount a successful public campaign to secure the Regional Housing Authority with the funding to operate. There are regional housing authorities out there that don't have funding, and they do not do well. Right? They just don't have the resources to bring to bear and assist people. The funding source is political, right? This could be a sales tax, and there are people that say that we might be at our limit in sales tax in the county. It could be a property tax. There are obviously challenges around that. This could be fee-based. Each of those would have their trade-offs, and there needs to be some analysis here. So that's part of the work that we'll start to explore. And then ultimately, just in general, I think we got to earn the trust, right? There are some who would support this right now in certain areas, and there are others who would not. And we need to demonstrate how this would work, what's the governance, and so on. So that's really the work that might be ahead if we wanted to tackle a regional housing authority. All right, so enough of me talking. Here are just 6 or so prompts for you all to think about, maybe to get us started. But when you first bought or rented in Eagle County, what was that like? Do you think someone could do that today? That's one way to think about this. If you were a new arrival, how is housing a challenge impacting you and your friends? Right? What are other challenges that are maybe getting in the way here? What options or tools that we've discussed would be most appropriate, would be palatable for the community today across Eagle? It's really important for us to understand what would be seen as viable and useful to people right now, what would be seen as too much or too little. How would you define a successful regional housing program? just share some ideas here. And then what other strategies or ideas could be included as we look forward and start our roadshow, bringing awareness to this idea, and what else could be done in the second round when we talk about actually bringing forth some ideas. So I'll leave it there for the moment.
So, well, I'll kick it off.
Please.
Do you have any, have y'all done any studies as far as with the Regional Housing Authority? Let's, they do modeling for like, let's say we get a mill levy, countywide property tax, estimate what would be palatable politically and what would be the revenue with those kind of compromises going on. And then obviously the other thing is with the regional authority, you would be able to apply for federal grants, state grants, and so forth, correct? So have y'all run any revenue models or anything to see what it would be to do a successful regional housing authority?
It's a little early for what you're asking,
Okay.
but that is, some of those models or some of those concepts are in the plan to start to develop, especially maybe let's say January, February, March of next year. So that is part of the work. Right now, we're just saying we're starting and trying to listen to people where they might want to go. But I appreciate the question, yeah, and there is some thought being put about where else in the region, for example, are some successful regional housing authorities operating? What did it take to stand them up? We're also thinking about looking at some that might have failed, right? What did they fail on? Some of the early evidence is that funding, right, has just been a huge gap. If you can't secure and show that you have a steady income stream, people start to see that it's just not viable.
And the other two options, it just seems like option 1 and 2 won't be successful as far as keeping up with anything. So option 3 seems to be the logical deal if it can be put together.
Potentially, yeah.
Do you guys factor in a little bit as far as the private sector with building? Because I see that there's a big development going on down at Trayer Creek and Avon, and hopefully some of those are deed restricted through Avon. But I'm just kind of with those and what's going on in Eagle, it isn't really listed. Like I think one of them's Pike, that they're building a bunch of places on the north side of Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
With those being on the private sector and that they build so many of them, do you think eventually it would bring prices down on, if you overflood the market with rental units, if what that would do?
Yeah, I'm probably not the right person to ask, but we have experts on the team, including Tori, right, at Eagle County. So we'll refer that question to her.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to guess. I mean, obviously, just intuitively, if we have greater supply, that tends to draw, right, price down. And
That's what I'm thinking.
supply and demand working as they do. But that's not always helpful for those low and middle income if they're all market-based pricing, that might not help.
Yeah.
So when we look at deed restrictions and local residency requirements and other things, that tends to have a stronger play where we think this is going, right? And so, that 150,000 to start if you're local and there's deed restrictions. Now you've got that locked up in the local market, and that's something that we're pretty interested in, rather than helping somebody that could afford it already.
And you did list 3 businesses there that's kind of stepped up, for employee housing. I just wish, other businesses that could do it would actually, take note on that. I think that would
And there
help
may
a
be
lot.
others. We're committing to asking around. If you have ideas or people that you think may be exploring these types of things right now, we'd love to hear from it. Ultimately, we want to kind of get a spreadsheet, of all the different projects and everything that's going to reflect what the investments are. But it is a little difficult to chase down where each one is and how it was financed and what the subsidies are and so on. So we started with the data we're sharing here today because we're comfortable with it, but there's more to learn, especially in terms of some of the private efforts. We don't know what they're spending, for example, or some of those things.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Great questions.
Yes.
Historically, at least in the last 40 years, housing prices have been kind of on a roller coaster.
Mm.
So we have pretty strong ups and downs, and we're currently very much at an up that is all-time up that is creating these housing problems. Do you guys run scenarios where housing takes a steep drop like it has a number of times in the past in terms of value.
We haven't looked at that right now, but again, maybe the housing folks at Eagle County have, so we can refer that and bring some answers back to you. If they've looked at, for example, 2008, 2009, right? That would be the classic case here. So I know they've been watching some of the inventory and the pricing.
It also happened big time in 1985.
Right, going way back. So I don't have that for you now, but if that exists with the county and their research folks, we will be able to share that in the coming months. Yep, thank you.
So, moving forward with your process, obviously you're going to all the jurisdictions in the county and.
Yeah, maybe just click forward one, Augustine. So our goal here, really through, I mean, we're just starting yesterday, right? So through October, November, and even in December, we've already scheduled out 15 meetings similar to this, right? So we're meeting with, some of the employers that we've mentioned. I've got Eagle County Schools tomorrow, we're chatting with them, and we're on their agenda next week. We're looking at, as many of the larger groups essentially that we can get in front of right now, just to make sure people are aware of what we're exploring, that we're exploring this. So that's the first round, and that would include some of the metropolitan districts that you'd be familiar with, trying to get on their agenda, Eagle Vale, Cordillera, and so on, and making sure that there are probably different groups. If we talk to Vale, they're really familiar with this. They're highly tuned into all this at the town of Vale and their housing group, and others may not be looking at this as intently or haven't. So we're trying to come to each meeting sort of where they are in their cycle, and part of that is learning where they are. So that's what this first round is, making sure that we can be relevant to people. The second round, after the new year, as you see here, we're going to pause, right? Probably around the holidays and just sort of collect, maybe we'll have 15, maybe 20 meetings. We'll see what we can get in front of. And we'll collect our thoughts. Like, what are we hearing from you all, like tonight, right? Is there general appetite to explore this, or is there general reticence to do anything, more bold than is being done today? That's sort of what we're doing now, is a pulse check to see where are the larger entities here. And organizations, to see if we could rally them or allow them to, if they'd want to be part of this and help influence and grow and share and propagate this idea through the spring. Ultimately, right, if it's the end of next fall, for example, or the following year, this could come up as a ballot measure, right? If there's enough appetite and there's enough support. We do have Bill Ray, you may be familiar with WR Communications. He's on our team, and we're going to be using at some point, probably in the early spring, we'll run a poll, a public poll that's scientifically valid to just understand what's out there. He's done this kind of work up and down the valley, so he's a trusted resource. And we think, if we had a scientifically valid poll, we would be able to say, in these areas there's strong support, in these areas there's no support, for example. That may define, where you would run something. Or how you would run it, and it could either come next fall if everything looks perfect, or it may take longer, right? And it may come in the next, or it may not come at all. We just want to be honest with folks that we're just listening and trying to understand what's that appetite out there and what would make sense.
Well, it's incredibly important, this issue, because obviously it will really have a strangle point as far as housing, because you can't get, I have a small, electronics company we did for 36 years. We'd be looking for techs, we would do a nationwide search, and we'd get some really good options, and I say, okay, we'll just look at the Vail Daily real estate offers and see because they wanted to buy, and it was just 1% out of it's 1% success in doing that. And so it would really be an economic boon for the county if we could get this thing figured out and moving forward in a direction that works. So, Brian?
Thanks, Earl. I think I want to write out the answers a lot, or some thoughts on all these discussion items for everyone's sake, because these are some really good questions. I think we could all talk about each one of these points in depth from our own experiences. From kind of like a Minturn point of view, I tend to start thinking about this in terms of the community aspect, and I think a lot of people, or some areas in the county, think about housing in terms of like building the projects somewhere else. Like we build apartments that are affordable somewhere, and not rental apartments. And this is our like neighborhood or whatever. And I think that probably what one of the most special things about Minturn and what sets it apart and makes it unique in this valley is the like lot by lot social mix and lot value mix, and like that's super special. Like you don't see that in like it's outlawed in most communities. You know, you don't see that in Eagle Vale. You don't see that, and that's like what makes Minturn Minturn, like without a doubt. And so when you know, and us being Minturn, we don't have millions of dollars to throw at some of the stuff that like Vale is doing. Like the Indeed program is unfunded; they find money for it, but it's amazing. Like it, we try to make some offers. I'll use like an anecdote. I know somebody who was a teacher about to leave the valley, had been teaching for years, was like, I give up. Was able to get a small apartment through the Indeed program, down payment assistance, lived there for a few years, found someone, got married, had a kid, and was able to then sell that apartment again and move up. And like that's like the story, right? But that cannot happen without programs like Indeed. And that doesn't mean like building an apartment complex down valley where we don't see the people living in the lower rental stuff. That means that they're living amongst us and are thriving parts of the community. That's to me like the most core important part of this. And when we need more golf carts. So the problem is when you elevate this to a regional thing, do you lose some of that community focus where, you know, that might not be the most scalable and ROI way to build unit by unit, you know, incremental housing for people who live here, but that's what's right for this part of the community, and that's what we need. So when you move it to a regional level, you might lose some of that, like what's right for these communities and how we can contribute. So that would be like my first kind of thought about this.
Yeah, appreciate that. You know, the governance of the entity, right, is to be determined entirely. So I think, you know, what they might or may not invest in, all of that would be to be determined. So, but certainly something to watch for, right, in your eyes, and I would appreciate that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Can I make a comment? I guess one of the things, you know, I think from this town's perspective that needs to be explored is this town has a lot of housing units that are entitled that it will see over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's going to make a significant impact on the town, its character, its nature. And one of the things that stands out to me about the 2025 Eagle County Regional Housing Needs Assessment is that as a percentage of housing units delivered over the last 10 years, the unincorporated area is the second lowest of delivering those units, Vale being the lowest. And so I think before the county endeavors into asking some communities to do more and for the voters to pay more, I think the county needs to speak to a strategy that it's going to have to deliver housing units in the unincorporated area.
Yeah.
And for some counties, that's a challenge because they don't have infrastructure, but our unincorporated areas do have infrastructure. And yet for some reason over the last 10 years, they haven't delivered as many housing units as a percentage as this town has.
Yeah.
So I think the county should speak to that perspective before they return to some of these communities.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fair. Understood. Fair. Appreciate that.
I think generally, we, you know, as when I spoke to community, and you know, to me, I mean, you know, we've always been crazy about architectural issues and so forth like that, single home families, which are not available for affordable housing. It just doesn't work. But we also need to grow a little bit more than what we're doing, just to lower the cost of living with our water system and so forth. And if we can work some magic as far as finding the ability to actually build affordable units in town, thinking, of course, I talk to you all about it all the time, the Explorer Act on that with the Forest Service, but I think that's about the only option we have on that. But you know, one thing that is really precious about Minturn too is our citizens. Our community is small, and we all tend to eventually we all get to know each other, and it's because and a lot of these folks are renting because they'll never be able to afford any kind of housing in Minturn unless something changes. And by growing a little bit, it'll help the cost of living, but still, you can't do single-family homes, maybe townhomes, maybe something like the Miller,
Miller Ranch.
Yeah, Miller Ranch, which is one of the first affordable housing units that were successful. The architectural style of that is kind of cool. It's very different, but it's all done well. But something like that maybe could help. But I think that trying to keep the people we have in town, not having to move down Valley. I had a lot of my friends moved down Valley over the years, and so I think that would, if we can pull it off, then that would kind of bring back the local into Minturn, and I think that has a lot more to do with our character than the architectural styles.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, you nailed it, I think, in that when opportunities, I don't, Forest Service may never happen, but if there is a future Minturn North lot chunk for $6 million that we could have bought through a housing authority and done a Wellington neighborhood in, that we as a small town never could do on our own, but we could offer that as kind of like we've got this opportunity in your town. Does the entire county think that this is the right, the right fit and for additional units and the right look? Like that might open a lot more doors for us as a community that we could never open.
Yeah, good point. Okay.
Yeah, my pleasure to see. Great to see everybody again. We'll be back, right, in January, February kind of time frame. We'll have some proposals and ideas for you at that point, based on this type of feedback. I really appreciate you being candid. That's why this works. If you can and you want, just make sure that QR code scan in there. Give us additional thoughts as much as you like. We're really collecting ideas right now. So, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay,
Have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Yes.
I just want everybody to know I'm pretty romantic, but this wasn't my idea.
Can we have some candlelight?
About half the town is out, and literally half the town hall is out. I've checked, it is, and XL knows about it, but that's what I was doing, is making sure.
Yeah.
They said 8:45, so we might need to come up with a plan B for the executive session, but we've got some ideas. No, but it's gonna be
Move over
crowded.
there where the lights are at.
Yeah, I was thinking moving Lynn's in the light, but no, I just didn't want you guys to think nobody was aware and we were sort of just ignoring it and it'll go away.
One of those spotlights.
Yeah, I was thinking of that too. That's what these lights are. They're
That's
emergency.
why the lights are on.
But I didn't want to pull a ladder out and stuff. Even at 6'5", I need a ladder to move those. But I was thinking that is turn them around and see if we can turn those on and, but we've got one more thing to go and then we'll do the, kind of the executive session, so. And you can still see, you can still see the council on the screen, so.
Yeah, that's.
I assume we've checked the breaker box.
Oh, yeah, and it's, actually Excel's aware of what's going on. Before I started checking that, I wanted to make sure that the breakers were good and what was out, and we have 2 transformers, one at each end of the building, and so one of them is popped, and I actually think it's this one right here.
Alrighty, well. We can go real slow with this next item because we got 25 minutes before the executive session. Where are we? Let's see. Oh yeah, we're now on business items. We have one business item, resolution number 43, series 2025, a resolution to award a contract for design and construction management services for the Bellum Bridge replacement.
And we have me, and you've got Jeff Spinell online.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
This is a CDOT funded off-system bridge design, so we have to select based on the qualifications of the designer. We're not selecting based on cost. And I was told by CDOT last week that we are eligible to also submit to their off-system bridge grant program again for construction dollars, so we will prepare to submit for that and hope for the best. Do you have any questions for Jeff or myself about what we're doing here?
Going through the material, we kind of following the same design type of process as we were doing with the water treatment plant. They mentioned 90% design is when we'll be able to put some numbers together.
Yeah.
And
And the designer that we're selecting is also the one that did the feasibility study, and Jeff has a lot of confidence in their abilities, and we're gonna look at, like pre-constructed modular bridges, but maybe we'll be able to afford some aesthetics on top of that, is what we're hoping for. Maybe like a galvanized steel or something.
Like painted color or something?
Something cool. Because they make modular bridges, they're pretty affordable. But they also have modular with like a weathering steel or galvanized steel on the side that would kind of give it more of an old school look. So it's cool.
I had a quick question. I was looking at that. It looked like their timelines were very quick and dirty at this point, but it looked like maybe a 3 or 4 month bridge out. Was that one?
Because they are pre-constructed. I don't know, Jeff, if you can speak to that about the timelines on doing modulars. I think you're on mute. We just got to get you unmuted.
no.
There we go. Yes, the prefab bridges, what they are is, if you look at the cover of the SEH proposal, it shows that is what that bridge that they're showing is, and that was their recommendation, or the recommended alternative in the feasibility study. And the reason it's faster is because the bridge can be fabricated off-site, and then it's brought to the site in larger pieces and assembled on site. So it does go up much quicker. The downtime for the bridge is shorter.
Was that kind of estimate correct? The downtime of what popped into my head was just impact on businesses and community. Did any of the responses talk about putting in like the Marathon or Grand Prix style temporary pedestrian bridge in somewhere in the area where you could mitigate impact to the local businesses?
I don't know if that was explored, Jeff. I think the cost would be pretty substantial to do a temporary bridge while you're doing, and then you have an access issue.
Yeah.
I've worked like NASCAR races and stuff where they literally like show up on the back of a semi and they like, it looks like you put up a scaffold and they just drop this like pedestrian bridge on it. Like if you've ever run a marathon in a big city or anything, they literally put these things up and take them down in like a day. And I was just thinking, like, I don't know, like if it's going to be like a 4-month thing, I wouldn't even know what that would cost, but I got to imagine if they're doing them for like marathons, that it might be feasible.
Well, it's part of what we talked about during the feasibility analysis is it would be inconvenient to close Bellin Bridge because the access would be all the way down to the Forest Service Bridge. And that's why the prefabricated bridge was appealing, is because of the shorter construction time. The problem with a temporary bridge is there's not much room. You've got you're going to have to thread it through the buildings that are already there. You've got the Eagle River Inn, the saloon, and the Anglers building, and there's no room. So if you did do a temporary bridge, what you would end up doing is constructing the permanent bridge in 2 pieces. You build 1 lane of it and put that in service while you built the other lane.
Yes, we looked at it and it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I guess that was my question. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing anything.
Maybe that's something we can talk to SCH about, is because maybe you could do I guess we could talk and see what the impact would be, because maybe you could do a modular roadway and then the pedestrian on the like north side could be done before or after. It's like 2 separate pieces, but I don't know if that's going to increase complexity.
One thing we didn't talk about was separating the pedestrian bridge. I mean,
Right.
we do see that in Avon, the pedestrian bridge is adjacent to the vehicular bridge, but it is a separate structure. And there's also a couple of them like that in Edwards. So if the concern is pedestrian traffic, there's no reason you couldn't separate the 2 structures and just have a separate pedestrian bridge from the vehicular bridge. And that would be quicker because that would probably just come in a couple of pieces and be able to be bolted together and erected on site pretty quickly.
Let's take a look at that.
Would that be a lot more expensive?
Question, Jeff, was about, would that be more expensive?
Yes,
Because then we have two bridges.
correct. You're going to have two structures. You probably have to have a separate abutment on each side for the pedestrian bridge. I don't know that, but I'm just speculating without looking at that with the structural engineer. And then it's a completely independent structure where if it's hung on the side of the vehicular bridge, you're using the bridge structure to support it. So intuitively, two bridges are going to be more expensive.
I know the pedestrian bridge we have up at the county bridge was, I think, 1.5 million to build. Of course, they did it with county money, so. But anyway, that's maybe an approximate we can use, but I mean, the bridge that's there. It's basically it's safe to keep it. It looked like the timeline was maybe construction in 2027. It looked like that was where I saw some information on. And is there any problem? Are you worried about Bellum Bridge holding up okay that long?
The Bellum Bridge, we've gotten warnings from the CDOT, the state inspectors, for the last several years that it is questionable, and where we started with SEH was 3 or 4 years ago. We got a critical warning from the state, and it's because of the flows in the river are undermining the bridge. All of the abutments, that the footings that are down in the bridge are being undermined from high flows from the river. And the new bridge that was recommended in the feasibility study would not have those center piers. It would be a clear span of the river and would only have abutments on either side. But that's the problem. And what we ended up doing with CDOT is we have been monitoring pretty much monthly, except during the winter months when we can't get to the survey monuments. But we've been monitoring movement of the bridge, and that was what CDOT. That was the compromise to putting load limits on the bridge, was to just watch it. And so that's what we've been doing. We've been keeping track of bridge movements, and it hasn't moved. Let me take that back. It hasn't moved significantly. There has been some movement.
So what about, is there a consideration of limiting size of vehicles or weights of vehicles that are too heavy and shorten the life of the Bellum Bridge?
I'm sorry, I really am having trouble hearing anything.
Okay, sorry, Jeff. So is there consideration of not allowing heavy vehicular traffic over Bellum Bridge because it could shorten the life of it? And now that we have Minturn Road going, have them loop around if they need to kind of get on that side. Has there been any consideration of that?
That is I mean, that if the state came in and put a load limit on the bridge, that's exactly what would happen. Is heavier trucks would not be allowed to cross Bellum Bridge. They'd have to go down and around to get to the businesses over there. But eventually, that bridge is reaching its service life. I mean, you can see the scour damage on the piers, and it is undermining. And now's actually a good time to look at it when the water's down low. You might be able to see the scour damage in the center piers.
Well, on that note, if we're using 3 months as a period of time from demo to completion, is there a particular time of the year where it's just not feasible to do anything, i.e. spring runoff?
Absolutely. That would be impossible. The bridge will have to be done in the fall, or winter time when flows are at their lowest.
Okay.
So there's no further discussion. We do have a no, go ahead. Yeah.
The other thing I would remind you all of is the feasibility study. One of the considerations was repairing the scour damage on the existing bridge. And to repair the scour damage on that bridge, we'd be digging up the river and getting underneath those piers and supporting them. And I don't remember I can look it up, but the cost for the scour damage repair was virtually the cost of replacing the bridge.
Yeah, you might as well just replace the bridge, because down the road, you're gonna be redoing that scour damage anyway, because the water's always gonna be eating away at it.
Well, the new bridge would be designed to minimize scour damage.
Right.
And that's
But
why I
if you
say
just-
there wouldn't be any center piers.
No, if you just repaired it, that's what I was saying, Jeff, if you repaired that bridge,
Uh-huh.
that would just kind of be a Band-Aid. Down the road, it's still gonna scour on it.
Yes, it would continue to scour. Yes, I agree with you. I'm looking for the,
Well, I think, are we ready to vote on the recommendation?
Well, the only other question I had is, wouldn't it behoove us to possibly turn the state and consider restrictions on the bridge now? We know it's deficient. Why wait till the state comes back and says thou shalt, as opposed to mitigate this situation within our control?
I think we're hoping that the state pays for some of it.
I'm just talking about a weight restriction, that type of stuff.
Oh, you mean wait,
Really
yeah.
love the idea of sending all heavy trucks that need to go to like the.
They did that on the Red Cliff Bridge. They have it.
I don't either, but I'm just pointing out.
So maybe if y'all could discuss that with SEH about whether the load restriction would give it a little bit more longevity so we could get this thing done on schedule and without any interruption of the bridge going down or whatever.
I'm trying to think what the heavy trucks that would be impacted would be, and I would think,
Concrete trucks, dump trucks.
Most of those.
so the food service
Some of those
restaurants.
might be maybe the one big system truck.
Yeah, what? I don't know, I was under the impression that this bridge is being constantly monitored and is currently safe and would have been closed if we needed to do any sort of this stuff. But is this separate from what we're trying to do with this RFQ, or is this like to boot this RFQ down the road because of the weight
In
restriction?
other words, if we continue with no load control, is that gonna make it start moving sooner than we can afford it to move? You know, that's why I was just seeing what that would mean, and of course, you know, the saloons on that side, where Marin's on that side, Mexican Bar and Grill is on that side. So it would be perhaps a business hit for them, but,
Maybe that's something the town could look into, the pros and cons of doing that and report back.
Those businesses predominantly use food
We wouldn't be
trucks.
guessing about it like we
Yeah,
are
that's
now.
yeah, I think maybe SEH is the ones to talk to.
I'm talking like
Jeff-
semi
Jeff to do
trucks.
that,
Or fully loaded dump truck.
but we do definitely wanna get this resolution done today too, cause we don't wanna sit back on that. That slows the process down.
I'm not suggesting that, just putting out, we probably need to ponder this sooner than later. Because again, it would really suck if a semi truck goes over that thing loaded out. And lo and behold, we have significant movement on the bridge now. Now it's out of our hands and it's in the States.
So, yeah.
So there's nothing else, we have Resolution up.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 43, series 2025, a resolution of the town council of the town of Minturn, Colorado, authorizing a selection and contracting of a design consultant for the CDOT off-system bridge project.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Eric, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
We'll have a follow-up on November 3rd on that, on the load restrictions. I will talk with Jeff.
Okay, cool. Okay, so future agenda items. Any? We've got lots coming.
A lot on the 5th. A lot of discussion.
Yeah, November 5th, we're gonna do a discussion item for the shooting, about the shooting range, that's one thing.
One of these, maybe we can try to thin it out. I know our new public works director, Mike Martinez, would like to come talk to you about his plans for snow removal this season, so he will also be here on the 5th to tell you what their game plan is gonna be and take your feedback.
We'll just push the budget item back to Jay, what do you think?
If you guys wanna operate next year, we can.
What's the golf cart discussion that we have?
That's for, we've got certain businesses in town that wanna operate golf carts to haul people, and we're running into concerns is
Kind
that.
of like the wing place has been
Right,
doing.
but they kinda wanna move them from like the end of the mile down to the restaurant, and we're kind of wondering if running a commercial entity down a one-way street, that kind of thing is actually in our best interest without liability.
I kind of thought that's what it was, because you mentioned that earlier in the summer that the sheriff's department talked to you on that.
Right, we've been working with the sheriff, Mike's involved in it, it's there, but it's not a fire, it's not something we have to do immediately.
Oh, we've been putting all that for a while.
And that's what I was thinking, just move it.
Do they have four-wheel drive golf
That
carts?
issue's gonna go away for 6 months.
What? Four-wheel drive golf carts in the winter?
Chain it up.
With little heaters.
Chains on the golf cart. Okay, so there's no other added items for future agendas. I guess we're ready to, you wanna just recess and then go into executive session, just because we don't have our participants?
So, we kind of need to, let's go ahead and recess. And essentially what you'll do is you'll convene an executive session with a motion.
Oh, they're here? Okay.
But I want to make sure what our best action is it, I don't think the room upstairs is working anymore.
Do we have some tables, like the plastic tables, can we put out there, and we'll just turn the chairs around and have the tables in the middle and everybody just sit around the
We can
table?
do that, and I've got,
What about the audio though?
move the lights around.
We turn the lights, we
I
have some
think we
lights.
can, and if you look at that, you can see pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are in the dark, but, I think we can make it work down here, and that's kind of what we were gonna do. We do need to record it, so I can find out if we can,
Yeah, I think we can stay safe.
let's go ahead and recess for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. till I-
Jeff, thank you. You can leave.